So you do realize that you were in the same motion that you were also supporting that the government officials can also help.
Yes.
That is Bangladesh. Despite it being a developing country, it has managed to install solar systems.
Welcome to Intelligent Maximum Debate House, where we are going to be discussing today on a topic, carbon limits and shift to green economy, sustainable for developing nations. So on this topic, we are having two rounds. On the first round, we are having our data scientist, Mr. Tawana Nyasha, who is going to be focusing on the motion, and our second participant is our medical laboratory technician, Mr. Emmanuel, who will be against the motion. Our adjudicator for the first round will be the man himself, Mr. Innocent. So with this, let the debate begin.
Once again, welcome to Intelligence Maximum Debate House. Moving on with our topic, carbon limits and a shift to a green economy sustainable for developing nations. I think all of us have seen in news and articles, the main story is going green, but we want to dig deeper and see whether this is going to be sustainable for the poor countries. So before I go any further, I want to talk about the debate rules. Here we have come to enlighten the world, to educate one another, not to fight. We say no to extremism, and we say the views of this channel don't reflect whatever that is true. This is specifically for educational purposes. So I think with that I should remove the cap so that we can let peace prevail. Nevertheless, not to be tedious to you any further, let me give the man for the motion, Mr. Tawana, say, over to you.
Very good evening to you, Mr. Innocent. And allow also me to extend my greetings to my fellow participants.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Yes, I'm going with the motion, carbon limits and the shift to a green economy sustainable for developing nations. And the answer is a resounding yes. Let me explain myself why I'm saying yes. The first argument is economic growth through green industries. What do we mean when we are saying, when we are talking of economic growth through green industries? That's whereby countries, they are venturing into green economy, which result in the use of solar, wind, and bioenergy, which are efficient, and they are being practiced as we speak. And according to the International Renewable Energy Agency, that is IRENA, this green economy is supposed to create 42 million jobs as of 2015. Okay, and there are, as we are speaking, countries that are actively participating in green economy. We take a look of Kenya. Kenya now, it is leading in the geothermal energy. Not only Kenya, we can also talk of Morocco. Morocco's NOAA solar energy, which is making it to be the leading country in as much as solar energy is concerned. We can also take a look at a developing country, that is Bangladesh. Despite it being a developing country, it has managed to install solar systems to more than 5 million homes. Also, the good part about this green economy is it kind of reduces on price volatility. We all know what fossil fuels they are capable of doing. They are ever fluctuating, but I kind of feel and see that the introduction of green economy can help to mitigate those challenges.
They are rechargeable.
They are rechargeable and they are renewable. and unlike oil, it can get used up. The other point is energy equity and access.
Okay, maybe I will have to stop you there so that we manage our time quite well. So the major point here is that there is employment creation coming because of this green economy. So we are saying let's go green, let's reduce our carbon. But we want to look at the other side of the story. Are developing nations capable of implementing these solutions? Aren't they being put in a cage whereby the developed nations are going to be the ones benefiting out of this green economy and the use of alternative sources? Boom. So with that, let me extend my hand to the other side.
Nice to meet you, the CEO of Intelligence Max, Mr. Innocent.
Okay, nice to meet you, sir.
So my name is Emmanuel. So I'm going against the implementation of carbon limits and the transmission to the green economy. I think the reality is most of the developing countries and also those developed countries who were developing, they got use of fossil fuels to raise their economy and to meet the basic needs of the citizens. Because when we talk about the citizens are the one who make the economy. So there are other impacts which may rise due to the introduction of green economy and implementation of carbon limits. For example, we have economic concerns. I heard you said there is creation of employment, but I think there will be loss of employment from the traditional and local industries that uses fossil fuels, and those are the works for most of the people. So the higher percentage of the people will lose jobs, because I see as for getting jobs in the green economy or carbon implemented systems, we need experts. We need some people who have the knowledge. And when we see the people down there, they don't have the knowledge. So they are being affected, hence there is loss of job. Okay. Also, we have a point of global inequity or inequality. When we see these governments, these developed countries, when they develop, they first used the fossil fuels. They were in use of fossil fuels, they were using them. So I think there's an imbalance just because they've exceeded their limits. They are the ones who exceeded the limits. So they are forcing the developing countries to bear up or to force them to adjust to it, hence neglecting the factors of the daily basic needs, because the daily basic needs are the ones which is essential to the people. That's what I can say.
Okay, I think this is a good point of view, because we look at the history of industrialization. It was solely due to the use of fossil fuels. The developed countries used those and they developed their economies. So we are left on a crossroad whereby we want to see whether we should take the road to going green as developing countries, because this is solely for those poor countries, those that are actually affected by the so-called climate action. It is true that when a flood happens, it is the poor that will suffer. So I think there is need for us to go deeper, but because of our time, we will let the further debaters clarify some of these points. With that, I end here. Thank you.
Well.
Welcome back to this segment where we are going to thank our previous participants. I hope you managed to grab one thing or two. So we are going to another segment, round 2, with our participants, industrialist Mr. Titus, who is going to be going for the motion, and our biotechnologist, Miss Entle, who is going to be against the motion as we continue with the same topic, are carbon limits and the shift to green economy sustainable for developing nations.
Okay, I hope I find you well, Miss Entle and Mr. Comforter. So before we begin, I would like to notify you one thing, that from Colossians chapter 4, verse 6, let your speech always be seasoned with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer one another. So I would like us to understand that we are just engaging and exchanging ideas. So let the way that we speak resemble the godliness of what we carry. So to begin off this session, this debate, I would like to have your opening statement from the positive notion, and then I will take your statement who is speaking against the notion.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Simbarashe. All right, I would love to introduce myself as Titus Comforter, and I'm an aspiring entrepreneur and an industrialist. So when it comes to the topic at hand, I believe going greener is very advantageous for the common good of the people. To begin with, we'll go with an economical benefit, right? Job creation above all things. You know, with the current state of the sources of energy that are obviously polluting our economy, you see that it calls for innovation. And where innovation is, when it's true innovation, of course, job creation is imminent. So it is good for the community in order to aspire and acquire the best with regards to the money and also a sustainable environment. Okay, then we move on to environmental benefits. So in as much as the people are gaining, they are also living in a better environment, right? Using fossil fuels, for example, which is the exact opposite of what I'm going against, right? It's going to pollute the environment, right? Polluting the vast vegetable with the volatile impurities. And you know the effects of that. It's going to create a generation of weak people with regards to health. It ruins our health. So on average, we'll be victims of those inflammatory kind of health issues. So that's a disadvantage right there. That's why we need to go green. And on a final basis, on a final note, we have a better energy access. That is very essential. Look at Africa. Of all the fossil fuels you've been utilizing right there are a lot of countries, if not all of them, that are experiencing load shedding. You see? So in as much as that has been a solution for a long period of time, it hasn't been so effective. So by the end of the day, we need to look out for other opportunities. And this is the hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. I'll get back to you because I've got a lot that I will need clarity on. But let me give her space and time so that she also expresses what she feels.
Okay, so while I understand the urgency of to address climate change, I strongly believe that the carbon limits and the shift to a green economy are not necessarily sustainable for developing nations. Why? So we say that the transition to a green economy requires significant investments of huge amounts of funds, whereas most of developing countries have not yet reached a limit whereby they are dependent on themselves. They are vastly dependent on developed countries. Question that I had to myself is, if the developed countries are helping the developing nations into this change, what are they developing in return from the developing countries? So I went on to say that the transition to a green economy requires significant investments in huge technologies and infrastructure. Thus, it will lead to the destruction of a lot of grounds, leading to a lot of what can I say? A lot of people ending up homeless. Because if we see these developing, the developed countries which are helping the developing countries, when they come into a nation, they tend to look for places where they can open new industries for abruptly growing their businesses. So we see that sometimes some lands which are from our forefathers, I can say generational lands, are hence taken from other people. So where are these people going to? There's an abrupt increase in squatter camps. We can take, for instance, in South Africa. So furthermore, I say that the shift to a green economy may lead to a lot of job losses and economic disruptions in industries that are heavily reliant on fossil fuels. Developing countries may not have the capacity to absorb these shocks. How am I saying this? The developed countries, when they are helping the developing nations, they are only seeing the greener side of them advantaging, of them, what can I say, of them gaining from that project, rather than seeing that they are also destroying the impact of lives for the people in the developed country. So I say no. This transition, no, we can't do with it.
Okay, thank you so much. I've picked both of your main points or your bases where you are standing on, but I would like to pose significant questions to both of you. You said that green economy is a positive change towards developing countries, but I would like to pose a question that, you know, as developing countries, how well capacitated are we to deal with the going green implementation? Because it requires resources. We are not capacitated like the countries that are in the Europe. So how then are we going to make this effective to us? Because it seems like it's something that was meant to benefit the people that are capacitated to do so.
Wonderful. I would like to address something. It is exactly what Miss Antley is talking about, right? But what it requires is a bit of common sense and a bit of sacrifice. So in as much as the capacity is a question of investment, where they're going to get the money, let's pause it right there. Let's see how much money we are losing because of the fossil fuels, right? So you see that in countries that are coastal, there's been a rise in the sea level, resulting in a lot of floods. You know what happens when floods come? The damage that comes will cost the people without return. So it is a question of like not attacking the question of investment and capital, but looking at how much we are losing for not implementing this. So when you realize how well this goes, you see that, well, it's almost equivalent. The amount you use to renovate what has been destroyed due to the climate change is well relevant if it was invested in going for the positive change. If we go for the solars, we go for a number of things that we can, like the windmills, right? Yes, we can sustain the people, and in a way we reduce what the fossil fuels have been doing for a long time, the climate change, right? So it's a question of, you look at what the investment is going to gain us and what we are already losing for not utilizing that.
Okay, are you also catering on what we are benefiting now from the fossil fuels, because they have sustained us from the beginning of time up to today present? So are you also catering that also, and are you also looking at that if we need solar systems, or if we need any methods that are going to help us go green? Do you understand the level of the mindset or the mentality with the leadership that we encompass or we have in the whole of Africa? You know, it has become a place whereby leadership is a circus. People tend to misuse and mislead funds. So are we going to be trusting those people that they are going to bring forth the change that is necessary when it comes to going green? But however, I would like you to ponder upon it. come back to you. I would like to pose a question to Miss Entley. She mentioned about the negative impacts of going green, but I'd like to also ask something that, change is something that is inevitable. So if we are going to be rigid as we have done to technology, if you look at how Africa is behind in terms of technology, it's so devastating. It's because we have been arrogant in terms of change. We have been neglecting change for the longest time. Now there is AI, but we are also behind on that. So if we are going to talk about sustainable development goals, if we are going to be rigid, don't you think that we are going to be remaining in the same places forever and ever? Why? Because not only does sustainable development goals create unemployment, but in the long run, it's something that is going to create employment. It's something that is going to foster a clean, healthy environment, because we will be reducing pollutants in the sky and in the air. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that. Are we not being rigid by disallowing going green?
No, we are not being rigid. In as much as you are saying we would be like behind, just like we are behind in terms of these technologies and stuff like that. I think this green economy thing, especially associated with developing countries, we are mainly focusing on economic growth instead of environmental protection. So as an upcoming biotechnologist, I tend to like put the things on the same scale. If we are chasing so much for economic growth, why not prioritize environmental protection?
Okay. I hear you, but for now, I think we'll just take a short break. Thank you so much for the contributions made so far. We'll be back. Okay, we are back from the short break. So now I would like to offer this chance and time to Mr. Titus, so that he addresses the question that I had posed to him before.
All right, thank you so much. So I would love to address the question of benefits. It's very easy. What is it that we're going to get from going green that we're not getting already from going with fossil fuels? It's literally the same thing. If the core primary benefit is energy, right, and that's what we go for, isn't it? It's gonna be there as well in the scenario of going for a green economy, isn't it? Suppose let's use an example. Wind energy is definitely gonna do us a provision of energy just as much as fossil fuels. Okay, and if you go with the sunlight, solar energy, it's still going to provide the energy. So the benefits, they're from both sides. So it's not like fossil fuels are providing more. No, we get it from both sides. And when it's a question of, are we going to trust the leadership in Africa to produce that change that we are seeking? Well, that's why I talked about sacrifice. It's a very important attribute in leadership. So it is a question of not trusting whoever is up there, but a question of knowing the person himself, whether he's a true leader himself. So it's a question of the leaders that are instated in bringing these changes. Are they the rightful leaders for you? Because before you trust them, before you talk about trusting them, you talk of putting them in those places, right? So before putting them in those places, not the important attributes of leadership. If they are there, then this is definitely going to come through. That's what I believe.
Okay, that's positive. That's positive. Okay, listen.
But as we are talking about this going green, you do realize that most of the developing countries have limited financial resources. You do realize that, right? And dependently on themselves, they don't have a stable, what do you call it? A stable financial input for their own country. What more when we are saying we'll be purchasing stuff to make windmills and stuff like that? Where will that finance come from?
All right, as an industrialist, I'll do a bit of math for you, right? So let's look at Zimbabwe to be specific. Where does our energy come from?
water, it's hydro
Water and what else?
and thermal.
Right. So as much as we have hydro power and thermal power, you see, we're talking about investment, right? Right. So in as much as you're talking about that, did you see quite good enough that these are also costing us already? That's why we do have load shedding, right? So in as much as they are doing the job, we are not even able to sustain ourselves in this. So it might be expensive as well. So it's a question of like which between the two devils are you going to choose? And definitely this one hasn't been working very well, right? So it's a question of like in as much as this isn't working for so much, right? We need to look out for what could be better. So instead of being complacent with like, well, it's gonna be hard for us, why not try it out? It's not a question of the investment being implemented in a single day, isn't it? You grow in it, right? In as much as you implement these things, it is also going to be of economical benefit in aiding the revenue of the country. The same kind of billing system in hydro can be applied in the energy, like the wind energy and the solar energy, isn't it? And that's aiding the revenue for the country. So it's a question of like, let's balance. We provide, we invest with this capital, and we see where the profits take us, and then we gradually increase and increase and increase. So as much as the investment is going to be large, it is going to be demarcated in a longer period. So it's going to be a progressive change rather than a one-time shot.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
So I hear you, Mr. Title.
Yeah.
You do realize that the construction of the Kariba Dam in Zimbabwe, which is actually supplying us with the hydroelectricity power, was constructed by the Britain country when we were still under the colonial era, right?
Yeah.
And till today, we're still indebted to them. We have a huge debt that we are still yet to pay for that construction.
what?
So do you really think it's of benefit? We are already suffering.
All right. Wonderful. I love that. Let me tell you this. The reason why the debt hasn't been paid is not the political, so we won't spit it out here. But let me tell you this. Something. Recently, it has been renovated. What does it tell you? We have the capacity. We have the capacity to even pay the debt. We have the capacity to even implement that, or maybe create another dam, because we renovated it, at least 75% of it. What does it tell us? We do have the potential. Probably not the will, not the sacrifice, probably not the right leadership, but we do have something that we are not tapping into.
How sure are you that it was us that renovated?
Well, I'm very sure. The president himself announced it. Yeah, why would he lie to his own people?
Okay, let's remember that let our speeches be seasoned with salt. We are still exchanging ideas. I would like to pose a question to you, Mr. Titus.
Yes.
When we are talking of development, especially in going green, don't you think that it's going to be a process that is going to delay maybe the electrification of our country in terms of the supply of power that we are currently having now? If we are ought to shift because the ways we are using are not climate conducive, don't you think that it's going to delay the progress that we've made so far in trying to electrify the whole country? Because come to think of it, that if we are going to shift maybe to wind energy, it means that we are foregoing the thermal, maybe the hydro thing that we are currently doing.
Yeah.
So it means the process we are going to have to start again. Don't you think that it's a more painful and more time-consuming process?
All right. Whatever we're going to invest, with the time, with the investment, it's worth it. Right? It's very worth it. Right. So the question you're imposing is that maybe the time is going to take too much. All right. So let me tell you this. It requires a bit of management. Simple. It's not like you're saying that today no more thermal. You mitigate what the thermal sources, and then you progress into the new era.
But if we are going to talk about all the conferences that have been held,
Yeah.
especially the Paris, the recent one,
Yeah.
it's like we are running behind time. Already these things have been said that we should do away with them. And if we are going to look at the SDGs, ISCO is mandated at 2030. And we are just like 6 years away from 2030.
Yeah.
Are you sure we could have banished the use of coal in our countries? That's a lie.
Of course, that is a lie, right? And it doesn't need to be the truth. But let me tell you this: if we don't make the change today, we'll still be talking about the same argument even in 2030. So it is a question of starting now, so that in 2030 we'll be like, oh, so far from the last 4 years when we had this question, we have done this. I'm sure we will not be at the same place if we start today.
Okay, impressive. So, Mr. Ensley, I would like to pose a question in terms of health. How do you view it? You know, when I was still learning in high school, I used to learn that the ozone layer is depleting due to fossil fuels. So, if we are going to still abide by the things that we are still doing now and not do with the green economy, don't you think that we are going to continue depleting the ozone layer? We are going to continue affecting the rain season. If you look now, there is drought in Zimbabwe, Malawi, South Africa, and most of the SADC countries. We have experienced drought in the past 2-3 years. It's because of climate change. So don't you think that the continuous use of fossil fuels is going to render us more problems in the future than ever experienced before?
I don't think it. I think actually you might be right, but I'll go against it because speaking of health-wise, how many decades has it been since people have been using fossil fuels and still the health is not deprecating that much? And otherwise, I also see that traditionally people have methods of curing themselves, which has absolutely nothing with going green. Actually, when you're saying we're going green, personally, I am mainly focused on environmental degradation. Personally, as a biotechnologist, I see that most of the medicines that we prepare in the laboratories, we prepare them from the plants that are outside.
Yes.
So when you people are now industrializing our nations, you are destroying more land, even if it is of benefit to us. You are destroying more land. We are losing more trees. We are losing more health. So you are also deprecating what? Health.
So don't you think that we are also doing the same by continuing to use fossil fuels because it's affecting the climate? If we are saying we are experiencing drought, it means that the trees are also being affected. The trees are now dying due to lack of water, due to lack of resources. It's all leading to the same thing. But then when we are talking of going green, it means that we are going to try to implement better ways that are climate favorable in terms of development. Now we are not just developing, but we are developing in a way that is going to be sustainable. By sustainable, we mean that for the present and the coming generations is going to be present and is going to be useful. So what's your take on that view? That isn't it we are doing the same damage that could be done even if we could say that development causes damage, but we are still doing the same damage ourselves by abiding or sticking to fossil fuels?
We may be doing the same damage, right? But actually, there's been an introduction of something that we call cloud seeding, and some what do you call it? Methods of fighting things like drought, for example, that what do you call it? Drip irrigation methods and stuff like that. There are things that we introduced that are called the creation of artificial leaves. All these, they all combined at once, they are able to like be acquainted into helping us stop this drought position thing rather than going green. Guys, this thing takes a lot of time, a lot of investment, and a lot of finances.
You know, I talked about common sense. This is where it applies. Alright? So look at this. The innovation is being used, artificial leaves, right? Cloud seeding, that's innovation. It's being used to solve a problem we are continually creating. You see, so we're going nowhere. Take that investment, use it to do something new that is less problematic. I mean, of all the problems we've been talking about, you know, they are minimized when we do wind energy. The ground, we just need a pole and then an aerosol. That's all. Just a small area, right? We solve the problem. We don't need the helicopters to do the seeding, isn't it? So that investment, if we use it to go on a progressive solution or alternative, then that's applicable and effective, isn't it?
But still, you do realize that it's time consuming. This greenhouse economy that you're trying to impose.
I know.
It's time consuming.
I know it's time consuming, but if we don't do it, 2030, we're going to be saying the same things. There's no progress. So it's a question of starting.
If we still do it by 2030, we will not have progressed that much.
I know. It might not be that much, but it won't be as bad as now.
It might not be that much, but it will have destroyed a lot. You do realize that?
What lot?
I spoke of people being moved from their places.
Good. Wait there.
Resettlement.
Wait there. Which form of energy generation moves a lot of people? Mining for coal or solar systems?
Mines for coals have already been implemented.
Of course, they have already been. Meaning the damage of moving people has been done. And do you know that that's the main source of income for most people there? So it means that as much as it is damaged, it's progressing to damage. So people are going to be moved again and again and again. You see? So we're creating the same problem. But look at the other alternatives. Wind. I gave an example. Like it requires a wind field. You don't need to move people, right? You just need to plant the tower lights, something like that. That's the space for a tower light is similar to the space required to do a windmill kind of thing.
Are we making one windmill, Mr. Sen?
Not one, right?
How many? To be precise, for a nation.
For a nation, right? For a power plant, right? Okay, you need at least 100, right? Maybe for a medium-sized town, 100, and that's not much considering that you are doing cloud seeding that you believe you're gonna be doing for the next 5 years without so much income coming up.
I've realized that in Zimbabwe they once tried to implement this solar stuff of like generating electricity through solar impact, right, for the whole town. You do realize that they cleared large amounts of hectares for an area to like put those solar panels, and then boom, they just let it go just like that after clearing and removing people from their places.
Alright, let me tell you something. The question also of who is doing what. If an army is led by a sheep, definitely they're going to be defeated. But if an army of sheep is led by a lion, we're going to come through that. I believe he was the one in place. We'll be talking of a different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do realize that you were in the same motion that you were also supporting that the government officials can also help.
Yes.
You are also going against.
I was talking about a scenario where they did right. Then this is a scenario where they did wrong. So I'm not saying that we should judge them on what they did right only. When they did wrong, when they did something wrong, of course I'm gonna be honest about that.
There you have it. I'm sure you have heard the points flying in, coming in from all angles. But for now, we say until we meet again next time, because we can never really come to an agreement upon this issue. It really needs a lot of unveiling. So for now, thank you so much for paying attention. Thank you so much for tuning in.
I just want to thank you all for listening to our participants for today. This was such an insightful session. I want to encourage someone who is out there to continue seeking this intellectual combat. It is better than to go out there with placards shouting. Your views matter. So with that, I want to thank you.
Intelligence Maximum Debate House,
where ideas collide.